Welcome to MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Brooks Appelbaum, who is a current instructor at Quinnipiac University of Women and Gender Studies, and is also a theater enthusiast and professional. Welcome, Brooks.
Thank you so much, Georgian.
Thinking of the current topic that you're teaching, certainly it's very much in our news in our society today, and women have contributed in so many ways despite barriers. What has been your role in developing these courses?
I was initially asked to teach women in gender studies sort of at a last fall at a late notice, so I didn't really develop that course so much as race to catch up with it.
Okay.
And there's a wonderful textbook, which I'm very grateful for. It has lots of really fascinating articles in it. It also has introductions at each point that are more historical in nature. So my role, beyond following what the program asked me to do, was to bring in things like films. I love films, and so for one thing, I asked my students to write a paper about a film, which I gave them a list, and I asked them to choose a film from the list or to propose one to me, and to watch the film and to write a brief but thoughtful paper about what the film taught them that they didn't already know.
Nice.
So I asked them to watch a film that they had not seen already. I got some wonderful, wonderful papers as a result. And I also learned a lot about some films that I wanted to see.
Great. And was the focus on women and gender?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Women and or gender.
So, okay.
You know, one of the things we talk about in the course is that blows my students' minds, for example, is intersex people who are born with genetic markers of both genders. And my students had never heard of that before. And there's a wonderful TED Talk by one of these women. She identifies as a woman. So that was a really fascinating new subject. And there are a number of students who take the course who are very open about their gender fluidity, and they introduce that as part of who they are. And I'm always very glad that they feel comfortable doing so.
Sure. Is there a way for someone to major or have a minor in this field?
Yes, one can minor in women and gender studies. It's a program as opposed to a department.
Right.
But we have a lot of minors, and many people who take the courses decide to minor in the program.
You've been teaching it one full year?
I taught it in the fall of last year, one section, and I taught 2 sections in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm teaching another section this coming fall.
And what other topics have you taught at Quinnipiac, and you want to share any teaching experiences?
I began teaching at Quinnipiac in the first year writing program. There's a one semester in which students learn about rhetoric and different ways of arguing, and then the second semester, when I came 15 years ago, I pitched to the supervisor a course that I thought would be really interesting in terms of argument. Because we have so much theater here, and because theater is such a love of mine, I suggested to her that we could read the scripts of several of the plays that were being done in the area. I asked my students to imagine what they wanted to see on the stage, not the entire play, but maybe in a particular area, maybe a character had really caught their attention. And then we went together on Sunday, on a Sunday, 3 times in the semester as a group to see the production. And then we came back and the students wrote their argumentative paper, which could be a review or it could be a literal argument. This was the way I saw it. This was the way the director did it. So hence the director did it well or not well or surprised me. And so I did that course and loved doing that course for quite a few years, maybe 10 of my 15 years. And then the department changed, which just happens.
Yeah.
And so that second semester needed to be something else. I kind of squiggled my way into something called the first year seminar, which is also for freshmen, and it's an introduction to Quinnipiac, and it's an introduction to thinking critically in a way that they may not have in high school. One of the things that's wonderful about that course is that all of us who teach in it can create our own section. We can create our own topic. It's an interdisciplinary course. For example, I can't say, well, I want to teach Theater 101 because there is a Theater 101 already. But I can, as I am doing, I can choose a topic that's interdisciplinary, such as transitions, which is what I'm doing. And I chose it because my students are transitioning in every possible way.
Yes.
And in their very recent past, I mean, they talk about middle school as if it were yesterday, you know, the pains and the agony and all of that. So we see 4 films that deal with this topic, and I also assign memoir pieces, pretty short, and I ask them to write memoir pieces and response papers. When I say papers, I mean short. But response papers to the films and to the readings. The idea really is to create sort of a family-like feeling. So they feel that there's at least one course where there's only 20 people in the course. They should feel, and I hope they do feel, that I'm a professor or I'm a teacher that they can come to, who knows their names, who knows something about them.
It's not a survey course.
It's not a survey. It's not, 100 people in a class. So I really like it a lot.
So before Quinnipiac, you have a PhD from Cornell in English literature, and your undergraduate work was at Princeton. So before teaching at Quinnipiac for, as you've said, about 15 years, you taught at high school and college levels. And what helped you adapt to different cultural settings, though, specifically something like teaching in Alabama?
Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama was the first job that I got right out of graduate school.
Okay.
It was not a great market. It's not really been a great market, I think, since I don't know when. Not knowing anything about the Deep South at all, despite being from the Midwest, it's another world. The most direct answer I think I can say, there were 2 things actually that helped us to adapt. I'm speaking for my husband too, but I'll just do that. We discovered the Unitarian Church, and we are not naturally church goers, but it was a very small church and really very secular. But there were very intelligent, interesting people who went to that church. And the pastor of the church was a really interesting woman. And so, there was a lot of singing and a lot of poetry and, things that people would just dream up. And so the arts were very welcomed.
Okay.
And the second thing that was helpful, there were 3 actually. One was the job. It was a really wonderful job, and it was right in my world, which was Victorian literature. So I really loved teaching both undergraduate and graduate courses in that field, which I had been working very hard on for a long time. And the third thing was theater. Right after we got there, a very, very small theater sort of sprang up, and I immediately auditioned for Glass Menagerie, which was such a wonderful opportunity. I was cast as Laura, and that was really amazing to just speak those words and do that work. And then I was invited to direct, and it was the first time I had directed. And I absolutely fell head over heels. I just loved it. Person whose theater it was went off to graduate school. And Dennis and I didn't so much take over, but we just created our own theater. And we ran our own theater for 3 years there. And we ran it in the black. I think that's the right word.
Yeah.
And that's the
good direction.
The good direction,
Right.
exactly. And it was lots of fun. And I also taught adults acting. I really like teaching beginners. They don't have bad habits yet. They're pretty thrilling to work with. So,
Great.
So that was
So
fun.
you had your own area that you could just carve out what you loved, the job that you had, as well as explore different opportunities. And that's terrific. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Plus, one of the greatest things about having our own theater, and actually this happened before it was our own theater, Dennis, who had come to everything I had ever been in, and I don't mean opening night, I mean every single performance. And I used to say, honey, you're really interested in theater, why don't you audition? And well, when we got to Alabama, I suggested a play to the person who was running the first theater. And it was a play Dennis really, really liked called True West by Sam Shepard. And Dennis auditioned.
Nice.
And Dennis was spectacular. He found that he loved theater, and so
So you were able to build on that even more.
yeah, it was great
wonderful.
fun directing Dennis, and I hope to do it again.
Okay. So theater has been a constant thread through your life.
Yeah.
Particularly, you had that opportunity to direct and to teach. And here you are a Wallingford resident, and you have done a number of different initiatives, including like a film series at the Wallingford Library. You write reviews, you work with community groups, you teach drama, and you're able to incorporate theater in some of your coursework, as you've already said. So tell us a little bit about some of those things, like the Wallingford series.
Well,
for
the
example.
Wallingford series was really fun. I remember very well sitting with Beth Devlin and handing her my CV, and she was very interested in that possibility. And there had been a film series, and the folks were moving on. And so Dennis and I, together, I think it was once a month, we would show a film, and we would have a theme for that month. One theme was, I remember we were interested in showing people that Marilyn Monroe actually was a serious actress and absolutely did her best in a number of roles in which she was quite good. So we definitely had an agenda there.
Yeah.
We had another one that focused on the very, very, very beginnings of several people's careers. So we called it "You Never Knew You Were Seeing Stars," and we had
nice.
different films in which people had gotten their start. So that was fun. Our intention was not particularly professorial or it was more about our own imaginations and hoping that we could spark an interest.
Create a spark.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
That's great.
So that was fun.
And so what do you find most rewarding about your theater work?
At the moment, what I'm doing the most of is reviewing.
Okay.
And I have learned so much. When I first came here, I would say I was very enthusiastic about a handful of what I know now are called the Golden Age musicals, for example. And I really didn't know very much about musicals beyond, Fiddler on the Roof and The Music Man, My Fair Lady, which is still my very, very favorite because of the Goodspeed and a number of other theaters around that do wonderful work with musicals. I learned so much about how they're constructed, and I read a lot. One might think of musicals as kind of a light thing, and some of them are, but increasingly musicals are becoming darker and are making money being darker. The production of Oklahoma, which I really wanted to see and couldn't, but it was It was Oklahoma, but it was Oklahoma with real differences and very dark. You know, I just love to learn. So that was something I would say was really very exciting. And just seeing the vast array of theatrical offerings here and being able to really think about them and why I thought something was good or not good. And then teaching that, of course, reinforced it for me, and it also, I always learn from my students.
It sounds like you replicated your experience of the benefits of having to write and review and be critical thinker to some opportunities for your students. So that's terrific. Another timely topic that we discussed before you came on today is around pain management.
Yeah.
And you have had your own experience with that, which you very generously said you would like to share. So you had a serious fall.
I did.
And one of the things I was not aware of is something called CRPS. So would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I fell down our stairs. I have our kitty to thank for that. He was in the hospital. I was certain he was dying. I was carrying laundry that I had no business carrying, and I was thinking about Nikki, and boom. And I sustained a number of different injuries, all of which were able to be healed through PT, and I had a wonderful physical therapist. The worst one was, I can't even really quite call it a break, but my ankle was injured in such a way that we really couldn't avoid surgery, which was really my goal. So a very complex surgery. Unfortunately, I had forgotten to tell my surgeon that in the past I had not responded to pain management drugs like oxycodone, which they typically give you when you've had a serious surgery like that. And sure enough, it was like a sugar pill. It was nothing. And there was nothing really that could be offered to me. And I think that that's what caused the CRPS. And CRPS stands for Complex Regional Pain Syndrome. And essentially what happens, it's very interesting really because it's very mind-body. It's about how our brains, when it's appropriate, we have our fight or flight. So that's our response to pain. What can happen in the case of CRPS is, if you think about the vagus nerve having a dial and it's flashing red, help, do something, help
Danger
me,
zone.
help me. It's like the dial gets stuck. And everything's okay. Surgically, I'm fine. You know, I'm learning to walk again. Everything's going as planned. But my vagus nerve is not convinced. It's still flashing, not happy, please help me. So at this point, it's very much a good day and bad day. Whereas some people that break my heart have a much more severe case of
Like
this.
consistent bad days. Yeah.
Consistent bad days, and it can spread throughout the body.
Okay.
People understand, I think, some about why, but there's no cure for it, and there's not a lot of great treatments, and the treatments are keep moving, and then various, people talk about various vitamins and Epsom salt baths and just those kinds of treatments, but not treatments that just turn a bad day into a good day.
Okay.
That's for the brain.
Well,
and
you're the
that
first person I've met
meditation.
that's talked about that.
Well, and meditation is a wonderful tool. And we used to do a lot of that. Yoga is another one. If you can do it and you figure out ways to do it, like in a chair, for example. There are ways to incorporate the self-care into one's life. And I think where I fall down is I get busy, and it's just my way. I get busy, and everything kind of comes before that 20 minutes when I really should, stop everything and for 20 minutes just meditate.
Right.
It's not that long, and it can make a big difference.
Thank you for sharing that, because that could be enlightening to any number of people.
Yeah.
That are watching, listening. Spoke to me about having a supportive woman supervisor, happened to be a woman, but how have women been influential in your life, in your profession?
In my profession, especially here, I've had a number of supportive supervisors. The person who okayed my theater English course, my theater writing course, she was wonderful. She was only here, well, she was at Quinnipiac for a long time, but she and I met at Quinnipiac for only 1 year, and then she left. Her successor, Glenda Pritchett, is just an amazing, amazing supervisor, and everyone who works with her loves her, and quite rightly. So she was just so supportive of that course and of everything that I did at Quinnipiac. She's the head of the first year writing program. The current head of the English department is named Val Smith, and she is another wonderful, very, very supportive woman. The head of the Women and Gender Studies program, she was absolutely wonderful to me when I joined that program.
Great.
So my experiences, for the most part, at Quinnipiac have been with terrific women who have been, not only supportive, but incredibly smart.
So as we age, we can reflect on our earlier experiences. And what advice would you give your younger self?
The first thing that comes to my mind is advice. It's a little bit of a regret, and I try not to dwell on regrets. I think advice would be, I honestly didn't know when I was an undergraduate or a graduate student that you could get a degree in theater, and I didn't know that I could sort of hop the track or go off to a different rail, and Cornell actually had quite a good theater department. I think I would have told my younger self there was a middle ground between the enormously high stakes and high risk of, I'm going to New York, here I come, and then audition, and, all of that, which I knew myself not to be cut out for. And knowing that about myself, and yet how much I love to act, how much I love to direct, I didn't know at the time there was another path which would meld my teaching with theater in a way that was more full, because once having either the MFA or the PhD, I could market myself to universities and really do that as my full-time job. So I guess I would have asked myself to think about that.
And it sounds as though you simply were, not simply perhaps, lacking really information at one level.
Yes.
And then certainly a mentor that could explain it and encourage, right?
True.
So there would be maybe a couple of pieces that didn't come together for you.
True.
So you've consistently managed to stay in theater and, developed your own path with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always end with asking you to share a favorite quote or mantra.
I have two answers. One answer is anything that's been written by Tom Stoppard in one of his plays. I encourage anyone to find his play, Arcadia, which is my favorite play, I think I have to say. And anything in it is way too long to answer your question with. But he's absolutely a marvelous playwright, and he's 84. He has a play on Broadway right now. I haven't seen it, but I will see it, and I encourage anyone to go to the city and see it. The quotation that I'll share actually is an homage to my father. This says a lot about my father. His nickname in college was Even Steven.
Okay.
And that meant he was fair, and he was very straightforward. My temperament was a little more passionate, shall we say. So he would say to me, he called me Dolly, and he would say to me, Dolly, you win some, you lose some, and some get rained out. So this was his attempt to, it's just the way life is.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
for coming on, sharing your stories, and please tune in to hear other fascinating women on future segments of MidLife Matters. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host. Thank you for joining us.